look at you instead of looking across the screen. There we go.
You did it again. Perfect. Good morning, everybody. That was Steve opening the show. You can't not do it. I love it. He has to talk through the start of the recording.
Think it out loud. Think it out loud.
Well, happy Monday, everybody.
Happy Monday.
Is this today's the 24th.
Hard to believe already.
Can you imagine next Monday happens to be January, but basically we're out of January this week. Wow.
Yeah.
So I thought about, Steve and I have a definite subject matter that we want to get into today. And just before we came on, you know what movie it reminded me of based on our conversation?
Tell me.
The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
There you go.
There's good stuff, there's bad stuff, and there's some ugly stuff out there, and we got to turn it all into benefits for us.
Well, it's always opportunity, no matter what's going on in the world, right? Someone finds the silver lining. So let's talk about that today.
Introduce us.
Because when we were talking last week, we were talking about how we started the year talking about high level, more where your mindset wants to be, needs to be. And I think today we want to get into some more of the X's and O's, the fundamental blocking and tackling stuff, right?
Yeah.
So let's. I'll let you grab the football and.
Oh, okay. Well, what the discussion that led to this was the idea that there's a lot of change happening now, and there's change coming. We know we have this inventory problem, and no real no end in sight for that for a while, just supply and demand. But on top of that, there's various, Melanie says, football always on your mind, Steve. There's various things happening to the buy side that are going to make it harder to be a buyer's agent, at least in the near term. Right. And we're seeing commission compression everywhere, but we'll probably especially see it on the buyer side. So we can get into that a little bit. That's the bad and the ugly. The good is we need to be double, triple, 10x our focus on listings.
Right.
And I'm getting, I don't know about you, when I'm working with agents, I'm getting a lot of this catch-22. I know I should be focused on listings, but my buyers are running me all over. I don't have time to stop working with buyers because I'm working with buyers.
Yeah, I get that. But that's just a signal that your business is not balanced in such a way as to provide you the best possible opportunity to have I don't believe I think this concept of a balanced life is somewhat of a mythical statement. I think we task shift into areas that are important to us. And so, what we think about is at any given moment is what expands in our minds. But thoughts are not who we are. They're just where we spend our time. But going back, to what you were saying earlier, there's if you're paying attention, you'll see that just, what was it, Sean? Was it roughly 2 weeks ago that Realogy, the largest real estate conglomerate in our space, filed a request with NAR to ask that they eliminate the requirement that buyer commissions be a condition of MLS insertion.
Right.
So I've been saber rattling in my own way, just trying to draw attention to the fact that there is a real possibility, again, the ugly, that, we're already seeing commission compressions. That's not news to anyone, but there's a real possibility that the offer of compensation goes away, and that is going to require a new set of skills for those of us who work with buyers to secure our commission for ourselves, because the real possibility here potentially is that the seller, especially given what's going on with the DOJ investigation, right? That's another lawsuit that's taking place, that the offer of compensation may be eliminated. So we want to talk about that. But I think what you and I were talking about is just how more important than ever, to your point earlier, Sean, how you need to be focusing on building your inventory so that you know what your number is this year, that at any given moment, you'll have to have so many listings to make your plan. So whatever that number is, that is what we would like you to start thinking about and focusing on. How am I doing so far? Or is that...
Right. We have to know that number. And in fact, with the business plans that I'm doing now, we don't even count buyers. Every listing comes with a minimum of one closed buyer. That's just, you're going to pick up buyers with every listing.
Right. Right.
So to look for buyers or to try and make your business plan about getting buyers, unless you're an actual buyer's agent, there's just no need. The only question is, how many listings do I need this year? How many should I have? A great question is, how many listings should I have live at any one time? Should I be carrying 2, 3, 4? How many listings should you have to achieve your goals?
Yeah, that's a really important number. I mean, that's your oxygen. I think about it this way, and and we don't have everyone on the call. I mean, most agents on this call have active listings, I would presume, right? But I like putting thoughts in my head that kind of trigger, certain mind visuals. And for me, if you don't have a listing, or maybe you only have one, if you walked into a store and there was only one object for sale inside of 3,000 square feet or 10,000 square feet, the impression you'd get is that business is going out.
Right.
And yet we don't look at, we need to create that same sense of urgency, or create that visual that keeps us on purpose with intention, with what's important for our business to secure our plan, and more importantly, the revenue we need for our family and for ourselves to move forward in 2022 and into 2023. And if you don't have listings, like if you have no listings right now, it's, again, to be crass, but you're going out of business. I mean, that's kind of how I see that. So it's that important.
So that's the first question that I want to tackle, because it's what I brought up. I keep hearing, I know I need to have more listings, but my buyers are, I have agents that are spending hours and hours and hours running around showing homes.
Right.
And they're not following their calendar anymore. The buyer has taken over their calendar.
Well, you can't say you need listings and then complain about the buyer activity, right? Because where you spend your time is what you value. So that would tell me is that you're not intentional with creating space for yourself to build your inventory, and that you're letting the tail wag the dog. And
Right.
so there's an opportunity to talk about how, that's just one, that's the low hanging fruit, right? I'm sure it's more complicated than that for people, but yeah, that would be the first indication, is that you acknowledge the fact that where you spend your time is what you value. And
I agree completely. And I would give them I don't know what to call this. Here's how I would think about it. The most important thing there is a listing, we're going to say. So that means the most important activity you have is that hour and a half every day when you are trying to generate listings. Let's say that's from 9:30 to 11 in the morning. And what I'm hearing from agents is, well, my buyer, $1.2 million buyer, called and said, we're available tomorrow at 10 o'clock. We got to go see this. So what am I supposed to do?
You're supposed
and I
to
ask
show
a very simple question in return.
Yeah.
If you had a listing appointment from 9:30 till 11 tomorrow morning, would you break that to go to this listing appointment? Well, no, don't be stupid. Okay, don't be stupid. That hour and a half of generating business is more important than a listing appointment.
Well, I actually think there are some people that would probably try to postpone the listing appointment because they see the buyer activity as something that will get them closer to their financial deposit into their business. And so, again, it goes back to understanding what your priorities are and what the opportunity is for you.
Right.
To your point, when you have a listing, you have leverage, and you can have a cross-selling opportunity.
That's the tail wagging the dog. Think that the buyer is going to get you closer to where you want to go. A listing is a check in your pocket right now. Buyers are.
Hey, Sean.
Position. Yeah, Melanie.
I'm just curious, maybe we could prioritize those buyers by the ones who are willing to sign buyer broker agreements with you and let the rest fall to the wayside.
That's a great idea. That's a great idea on how to prioritize who you're going to actually spend your very precious time with. If they're not willing to commit to you, how are you committing to them? So I would start, though, with my sacred hour to an hour and a half a day that is for looking for business. There is nothing more important than that. Nothing breaks that appointment. No listing appointment, certainly no buyer. We have to go get inventory.
Well, you treat it as, yeah, what you're talking about is you've dedicated time on your calendar, right? Because again, it's, I know this sounds intellectually lazy, but if you have objectives for the day and they're not on your calendar, you're just winging it. So
Right.
nothing, you're not intentional with anything. You're just going within your core competency or where you feel most comfortable in the moment. And then you just shift your focus. This creates, the stress test, EKG in someone's business. It's peaks and valleys, peaks and valleys, peaks and valleys, because you can't measure anything that way. There's no way to measure your performance, how effective you are in that hour of lead generation, or how effective you are with your buyers, because you're all over the place.
Right. You're saying you have to run it like a business.
If I've learned anything since 1989, I've learned that the people who have lived before me leave clues, and those that succeed at the highest level are very system oriented. That's not to say that they live their life by some old, by their calendar exclusively. That's not saying that. What it is saying is that they've blocked out time, and that 90% of the time they are working off of that data or off of what those objectives are for the day. And when stuff happens, stuff happens. So like someone said, well, what do I do, Sean, if I have a buyer that says they want to go show property that they, let's say it's a relocation buyer, they got to catch a flight at 4:00. And at that time that they have available, I have a listing appointment. Now, I think you have to prioritize your day and see whether or not it is possible to reschedule the listing appointment. It would be difficult for me to envision an agent that would be willing to let that say, I can't do it, sorry. I think most of us would try to find a way to reschedule those things, because the priority would be, I only have a limited opportunity with this buyer and I've got to make that the priority. The point here is that's an anomaly. How often does that happen?
We talk about it more than it ever happens.
So when you and I are in conversations, these are just excuses, creative excuses, to avoid embracing the reality. You can't change what you don't acknowledge in your business. You can't change it. And if change is that I want to have a more predictable, duplicatable process to my business, then I have to acknowledge that this is time well spent, meaning prioritizing and scheduling and working a system for my business. So, yeah, that's that.
There's a couple concepts here that we need to understand. One is we talk about the low inventory. Every single home is for sale. Not just the homes in the MLS. Every single home is for sale.
That is true.
There's some price at which someone will sell their home. So this is old school opportunity. I need to go into a neighborhood where people are trying to buy and start talking to the homeowners. I have people looking right now. There's different scripts for this, but one of them is, can you imagine a circumstance that might cause you to want to sell your home? A certain price maybe, or your dream home becoming available? That's a question. You'll get an answer to that. And sometimes you'll be surprised. They'll give you an answer that isn't very far off from where we are right now. But if we're not asking them, how do we even know if that home's going to be for sale? That has to be our highest priority, is getting out and finding listings, because the buy side, as you said, is getting attacked from all sides.
This past Friday, Tracy Ross in Encinitas sent out an email, I think to most of the folks, at least in Compass. I didn't check the district list, but she sent an email that says, I have an $11 million buyer that needs a home right now. If you know of anything, please reach out to me. Now, you talk about an opportunity where, someone is locked and loaded for something for 11 million. You may not know anybody personally that comes to mind that has an $11 million property that would be for sale, that would meet that buyer's criteria. But like everything in life, it's not who you know, it's who they know. And she just gave everybody a softball to reach out to your database, right, your relationships, and ask the question, in an effort to help a colleague find their client the perfect home. Do you know of anybody right now in your network that might have a property in North County, San Diego, valued at between this bedroom, that bath count? She just gave you an opportunity to reach out and just connect with people.
and have truth and have a buyer.
They have the buyer. Yeah, this is for real. And heaven knows that, I know for me, if I had that client that could sell at 11 million, it would change my year. Heck, I'd be happy on the referral fee I'd get from Tracy. Just say, hey, call Sean. I mean, he's got a property out in Rancho. Anyway, you see my point is that this is an activity that you could grab and possibly engineer a transaction for yourself. An intentional transaction that could produce really big outcomes. They could also say, well, no, we don't really want 11 million, Sean, but it's funny you should call today.
Right. It's amazing what happens when you talk to people.
Yeah. There's no technology that will ever replace your relationships with people. And, it got me to think, I was thinking this morning, like, before we get licensed, we see all these leads, we have these big ideas of what we would do and how we would come into the business, and take advantage of these missed opportunities. And then we get licensed, or a lot of us, and lead generation becomes this very scary thing, because we have to confront a no for real. And I think that's what shuts so many people down from doing this, because you're going to fail 95% of the time for every question you ask as it relates to any lead gen activity. So this gets exhausting. It's mentally challenging. It doesn't feel good to always be told no. But, I think of my father, who I know was an engineer, who got up every day for however many years he worked and went to a job. I know he didn't not dislike his job, but I know if he had to live his own passion, he would have done something different than that. But he did it because he had to provide for himself, provide for his family, provide for his children. And I think that sometimes this is that kind of activity, that to have a softball given to you where you could take advantage of that and reach out to your database. And by database, I mean your relationships. You have relationships with people. And ask this question and know that if you made 100 of those calls, what are the percentages, Sean, that they're going to come back with a solid lead if they just called 100 people, 100 relations that they have? What would that be?
It would be probably between 1% and 2%. You get one or two transactions.
Right. That's guaranteed. The numbers are the numbers of the numbers, right?
I'm even simpler than that. If you've run through your database, the people start calling neighborhoods. Knock on doors if it's not gated. We have to find the people. There's buyers out there. I want to go back to something you said, because I think it's a big problem. We fear rejection.
Yeah.
Even though it doesn't hurt, but nobody likes it. I think you need to change. We need to change the way we look at this. I don't want to be salesy. I don't want to hear no. Well, good. Then don't be any of those things. But we are our problem solvers. Selling a home is a huge, stressful, painful problem. Trying to buy a home is a big, stressful, painful problem. What you're doing when you're talking to people is trying to ascertain if they have a problem coming up in their near future. And if they do, thank goodness you have the cure for it. You're there to help them. If they don't, that's not a rejection. That's like a doctor asking you if you had heart palpitations. And when you say no, the doctor feels rejected. No, fantastic. I'm glad you're not about to embark on this really painful experience. If you are, though, or if you know anybody who's showing symptoms, their house feels too small. Their house has gotten too big, right? They're going to open houses. Oh my gosh, that's an advanced symptom. You need to call me right away, because I have the fix. I have the cure. I can solve that problem. There's no rejection involved at all. I'm happy when someone doesn't need the service. That means things are good.
I've got so many deeply personal war stories where, I started my career almost it was exclusively for sale by owner with about 25% expired listings. I built up my inventory that way. So I would argue that a for sale by owner may be, if not the one of the most hostile environments an agent can put themselves in. And I just kept at it so much so that I developed such a callous. And it became so easy over time because they all have the same objections. You know what I mean? Like every for sale by owner is and what I learned was for me to succeed with a for sale by owner, I had to connect. Normally it's with the male in the home. I don't mean to get into, but normally it's the male in the home. I have to connect with his ego, help him be right with me, right? Like say, look, I appreciate how you feel. That makes sense. In fact, everything you've done up to this point is not all that different than what I would do, right? And then lead into the solution, right? I don't want to get into the dialogue here, but that was my aha. Once I figured that out, every connection I made with someone with high ego, I was able to join forces with them and increase my success rate. So again, I don't know, people say, well, there's no FSBOs, there's no expireds. Well, maybe. All I know is that if I got onto Google right now and I started Googling a couple of those two topics, I know I'd find a few, or I could go back and look at those folks that tried to sell towards the end of Q4, took their house off the market because they were, either frustrated the holidays and now are considering whether they will or will not sell. I think being able to talk about specific communities that have seen a significant increase in home value is a really strong conversation that you can have with folks as you try to educate them on what the market is doing. Because you said something earlier, Sean. You said, is there any price at which you'd consider selling? Everything's for sale.
Everything.
We had a house in our neighborhood. It hasn't closed yet. I can't tell you what it's sold for because I'm not sure I know. But I do know it's a cash deal is going to close within 2 weeks, sell for $800,000 more than that same house would have sold in November of last year. Did you hear what I said? I mean, so to get on the horn in the network, if you have that going on and talk about, really, my house isn't for sale, there's no price at which you'd consider selling. It's all these are about creating opportunities for you to speak intelligently with information that gets their attention, certainly piques their curiosity, and it may get you the leads you need to get the listings you need to make your plan. That's just one thing. But.
I agree. I'd love to, we've touched on a couple things, but if anybody on the call, if you want to go on the messages or come online, if you're getting a different issue with the buyer, if there's something else that we need to help you overcome to get focused on listings, or tell us why you're having problems getting listings, this is a good time. There's a big group of people here to help with it.
Yeah, I don't see. Let me check the comments real quick, Sean.
While we're thinking about that, here's one of the takeaways that I would ask of you. What is your listing target? One listing a week, one listing a month? Have an actual number. And John's got a hand raised. Love it.
Yes.
Morning, everyone.
Good morning, John.
Morning.
So I've got a client who is sitting in a $2 million house, and she wants to sell it and buy an $800,000 house. But she's not going to be able to buy the $800,000 house until she sells the $2 million house. And if she sells the $2 million house, she has nowhere to live while she buys the $800,000 house. I know bridge loan is one possibility. What else? What other ideas do you got? And there's the 2-month rent back is a possibility. But we all know the buyer's market is so competitive right now that I wouldn't want her to risk a 2-month window. What other ideas do you guys have? Thank you.
So yeah, my first would be the bridge loan. I mean, I assume she's got a lot of equity in that $2 million home. She needs to get that equity out, and it gives her the opportunity to do this at her time. She can go buy the $800,000 home flat out and fix it, move things, then sell the $2 million home after the fact. That's the ideal way. Bridge loan. Steve, do you have any other idea on that?
Well, I think that's the most obvious. And I also think, John, that you have an opportunity to construct the transaction in such a way as to safeguard her interests, conditional upon successful close, conditional upon, the replacement property being found within a specified period of time. The other reality might be is that the market is at a pitch right now, or is so high that you may have to induce some reality in the sense that even if we don't find your perfect home within a 2-month span, again, finding short-term housing that she could, I mean, even if it's like a Residence Inn or one of those places for 2 months, so that you sell at the height of the market and get the top dollar. Well, could it go up further? Sure, it could. Could it go down? It could. So, but there's that solution too. There's always short-term solutions, for 30, 60 days that could park her in such a way as to secure the highest and best equity position in the sale of her home. So, there are all kinds of ways to introduce, the what if scenarios, but yeah, bridge loans would be my first backstop, and then I would look at ways to safeguard her interest contractually.
And you just bought them 3 or 4 month window now, if need be, with the extended housing.
Well, can I say one thing too, Sean? I just hit my, an $800,000 home, that could be challenging because of that price point. The velocity is so great; it's just insane. So, you do have private exclusives with Encompass, and you could start now on on creating a buyer profile that could get her reassured that internally, off market, we have access to private inventory that could be a solution as well. And so there's that component that you could also introduce to help ease her mind.
The Airbnb, the bridge loan. But here's the other opportunity that kind of goes back to what we're talking about. You have a very powerful tool right now. You have a $2 million seller ready to go. You can sell that property. I would be out talking to homeowners of homes that she wants to live in, areas she wants to be. I have a buyer. She's selling her $2 million home. She would be interested in your home. Have you considered putting your home on the market? What would you sell it for? And create a completely off-market transaction where you control the time and pick up another listing.
Well, that's what we were talking about earlier, yeah.
All these things, right? We got to look at the opportunity. How do I use this to pick up more listings? That's how I want us to look at everything first. Can I generate another listing right now with what I have?
And identify the agents, whether they're inside of Compass or wherever that can have that has or plays in that space. If that agent's within Compass, you want to make sure you establish, a connection so that if they find or know of anything, because look, every great agent, John, you and God, everyone on this call probably knows 3 or 4 sellers that are contemplating getting their home on the market in the next 6 months to 60 days. So it's again, work your network internally and possibly even externally to identify those agents that play in that space, that have the relationships with sellers in those price points. Because $800,000, the challenge will be is anything at that price point, it's like ether. As soon as it hits the air, it's gone. It evaporates. So
love the question, John. Thank you.
Yeah, great question.
Anybody else having a scenario or situation that they want to throw out?
I talked to a couple of people that were getting ready to sell in January, and both of them are reluctant. They feel really uncertain about the market. Some people lost out money on stock just recently last week on Tuesday. So they're like, no, we're just going to stay put. Didn't really have much to say against that. So I wasn't prepared for it.
So one of the things that we want to make sure and do, and I didn't mention this with John, but everything starts with why. Get to the emotional core of why they're moving. For some people, it's well, if I can, I will, no big deal. That's a tough client in this market on either end of it. But if there's a reason, then we can help them solve that reason. We can work around the other issues like lack of inventory, because it's in comparison to something that's really important to their heart. We have to know what that is.
It wasn't about the inventory, but it was about their financial situation. Like I said, they lost that money on stock, so they were in a position where they could pay cash and then sell their house, and that's the only way they wanted to do it. They don't want to do that anymore. And then the other couple, they're like, oh, we'll just, we don't want to take on a bigger mortgage payment because who knows what's going to happen, so we're just going to stay for a little while. So that kind of stuff. She can't get a full-time job in a medical field. She said the hiring process is very difficult right now. So it's financial.
Well, that can be I mean, if financials aren't objections we overcome, those are conditions that have to be dealt with. We may not
Right.
be able to do anything in that situation.
But you still wanted, to your point, Sean, earlier, you still want to know, well, help me out. So now the timing may not be right. Remember, your job is not so much as always to have the kill shot today. You know, you're
No, I
building
know. Yeah.
relationships for your future. So if the conditions were right, help me understand why you would be considering this move to begin with. But let's put aside that you're ready to list right now. Tell me your story. Like why would you consider moving? What would your objectives and goals be? And you know, you'd be surprised at the amount of information you can gain from just asking that simple question. That even if they're in your particular follow-up folder for the near future, it allows you to effectively start touching them with information that's exact to what it is that they're looking for or need that could change their outcome, right? So, well, we were just really dying to find a home that had these views and this location with that school. So, you know, if you've got that information, that allows you to stay on the hunt and stay in flow with them with information that could, you know, again, energize them to change or move up or change their thought about selling now, even though the stock market isn't performing. If you always want to connect them to their emotional needs and reasons for wanting to sell in the first place. And if we just try to make a sale for the sake of making a sale without really connecting with their need, I think we don't perform at our highest level.